Hi everyone, winter break is here, Christmas is here, and I wanted to speak to those of you headed home to a place that may not feel like home anymore. For some of us, college feels more like a home than the place we grew up in. And I also wanted to reach out to those facing Christmas with a heavy weight of grief on their hearts. If you're feeling displaced, alone, or carrying the pain of loss this holiday season, this episode is for you. Listen in, and I pray that the Holy Spirit brings you comfort and peace as you navigate this season. Hi, I am so happy you're here. Welcome to Inspired by Grace. Do you want to deepen your faith and find peace in the everyday? Do you find yourself up late at night Googling how to reconnect with God? What's the meaning of suffering? And how to strengthen my Catholic faith? Do you wake up with big, ambitious spiritual goals only to feel overwhelmed and frustrated when it's time to follow through on prayer again? Hi, I'm Amara Heinrichs. Like many of you, I've struggled to feel God's presence in my life. I've often felt lost and alone, yearning for a more vibrant connection to my faith. In my spiritual journey, I sought comfort in community, but I frequently told myself that my pain and grief were barriers to experiencing God's love. Until I discovered the beauty of seeing God in the everyday moments, even in suffering. In this podcast, you will find inspiring stories, practical insights, and a nurturing community so that you can revive and connect deeply with your faith. Together, we'll set out on a journey to rediscover the grace in our lives. Your faith isn't meant to be walked alone. Let's do it together. So, whether you're feeling overwhelmed, searching for answers, or simply looking for a deeper connection, I invite you to join me as we explore the beautiful everyday moments where God reveals His grace. So grab your favorite beverage, settle in, and open your heart to the journey ahead as we dive into today's episode. Hi everyone, I'm so glad you're here for today's episode. Before we dive in, I want to start by saying that grief is such a deeply personal and tender experience. Each of us process it in our own way, and the way I walk through my own grief might look very different from yours. If anything I share today feels confusing or stirs up more pain, I want to ask for your grace. I know I can't speak perfectly to everyone's heart. Trust me, that's something I'm learning to accept. But I do trust that the Holy Spirit meets you where you are. If something I share doesn't resonate, that's okay. Take what helps you draw closer to the Lord, and let the rest go. We're all on our unique journeys of healing, and I hope this episode gives you a sense of peace. Before we get into it all, I want to do my check-in of my high, my low, and my God moment for the week. It's the end of finals week, and Christmas break has officially started. My high of this week, I'm done with classes. Next semester, I start my internship, so that was my last time having regular classes. I'm so excited for winter break to go home and to spend time with my family and celebrate Christmas. As for my low, I've had a few bumps in the road this week. I'm not able to use the microphone I'm used to using because we can't rent them over break. Womp womp. So if this episode sounds a little quirky or different, I am very sorry. On a personal note, it was a tough week health-wise. I had some doctor's appointments and didn't get the news I was hoping for. Plus, if you know me, you know I do not handle needles well, and I had to get poked a lot. On Thursday, it was rough, but I'm doing a lot better now, and we are on the up. Spiritually, one of my highlights was watching The Christmas with The Chosen with my small group. If you're not familiar, The Chosen is a series that brings the gospel to life in such a beautiful way. It's free on a lot of platforms, and I highly recommend checking it out. Their Christmas special called The Holy Night. It focuses on the nativity and the shepherds, and it really helped me shift my mindset from finals to the true meaning of Christmas this week. So there's that. And then finally, my God moment this week, I was blessed to spend some wholesome quality times with friends that I didn't expect to. I had very beautiful, intentional conversations, and I really needed them. The Lord definitely placed them in my life this week to support me during this harder week. As we move into today's episode, I want to invite you to open your heart. This is a heavier topic, but it's one I feel is so important to talk about. I'm really excited for Christmas, but I also think these conversations about grief and healing during the holidays needs to happen as well. So I'll just dive right in. The first Christmas after my dad passed away was incredibly hard. For years, Christmas had been a joyful time full of laughter and family. For our family, it was extra special because my dad's birthday was on Christmas Day. There was always something magical about celebrating him alongside Jesus' birth. He never made the day about himself. My dad would go to Mass Christmas Eve and Christmas morning, which I got to go along with him most of the time. And Christmas Day morning masses, there's a lot less people. So it was just a very beautiful thing that I got to go with my dad, especially on his birthday. We'd hear the same homily. It was a very beautiful, I don't know if I don't want to say tradition because it wasn't intentional. Like, it just happened to happen every year. I feel like that we would go to Mass together in the morning. My dad would start his birthday with the Lord and would celebrate Christmas, and then at night, we would celebrate him. But after he passed, everything felt different. And if you've lost someone, you know what I'm talking about. And it was especially hard because it was my freshman year of college, my first time really out of the house and on my own, coming back for winter break for an extended period of time. When I came home from college that year, my freshman year, I expected the house to bring comfort like it always had, but instead it felt like I was walking into a space that was nothing but grief. And that wasn't anyone's fault, it was simply grief. I would see my dad's boots sitting in the entryway, like he was going to walk in any minute. I'd sit in the living room and his chair was sitting there empty. His pile of change he'd empty from his pockets after getting out of the truck were just things that we're looking for, and they weren't there. Everywhere I looked, I saw heartbreak. Every small detail was a reminder of his absence, and we were all feeling it. It was hard to support each other when you yourself can't support yourself. It was like a punch to the heart every time I noticed something that screamed he was here, only to be reminded that he wasn't anymore. It was a hard Christmas season. I couldn't understand why God would ask us to find joy in the middle of such heartache. Why didn't he save my dad? Why didn't he save my family from this pain? These questions echoed in my heart, and no answers came. That first Christmas, I felt like I was wandering through a wilderness of loss. I wasn't sure how to find the joy of Christmas. I looked around and I saw everyone else celebrating as people should. It feels like the whole world should stop when you lose someone, but it keeps going. Home, to me, didn't feel like home anymore. It was still filled with great memories, but those memories only seemed to deepen my grief. And as I've been reflecting on Christmas and hearing the Gospels and the daily Mass Gospels, I've found that grief is like the wilderness that is talked about in the Bible. It's not something we can avoid or push down. It's something we have to walk through step by step. In that wilderness, God meets us, even in our pain. When we look at the wilderness in Scripture, we see John the Baptist living there, being prepared for his mission. Jesus himself spent 40 days in the wilderness, fasting, praying, and being strengthened to overcome temptation. The wilderness is barren, quiet, and isolating. But I think it's also a place where God does some of his most powerful work. In the midst of my heartbreak, I have never felt closer to God, which is just crazy to say. Even I'll read about saints and they're just begging to suffer. I'm not saying you should try to suffer more, but there is something about suffering that brings us closer to the Lord. I think it's a lot like hitting rock bottom, and the only way you can go is up. I think a lot in suffering is when you question God, and maybe that's the first time you've ever turned to God. And maybe that will be in anger or grief or frustration, but you're still looking at him. Just keep showing up to the Lord, whether you're angry You don't understand him. As long as you keep showing up and engaging in that conversation with him, he will reveal the truth and the goodness of him to you. If you find yourself in the wilderness this Christmas, if grief feels like a heavy blanket you can't shake, I want you to know that you are not alone. Just as God was with John the Baptist, and just as he strengthened Jesus in the desert, he is with you now. It may not look like the rejoicing the world tells us Christmas should be, but maybe it's the stillness of the wilderness. You'll find a deeper kind of hope this Christmas. This time of year also brings to mind those who might feel homesick. Not for just a place, but for a sense of belonging. For a while, my home just didn't feel like home. And there's people who experience that every day. For some of us, Christmas break means heading home, getting to relax, enjoying homemade food, watching movies, and just taking a breather from the busyness of life. Has spoken to friends who can't wait to go back to their families and experience all the comfort that home brings. But I've also talked to friends who dread going home. For some, college feels more like home than the place they grew up. Maybe you feel homesick for a home that doesn't exist anymore. Or perhaps your family dynamic that shifted and no longer brings the comfort it once did. Maybe you feel homesick for a home that doesn't exist anymore. Or perhaps for a family dynamic that shifted and no longer brings the comfort it once did. Homesickness isn't just about missing a place. It's about longing for what that place represents. A home is where you feel like you belong, where you feel welcomed, loved, and at peace. I am familiar with that feeling of longing. Maybe you're feeling like you're walking through a wilderness of your own, wishing for something that feels like home. Here's the beautiful thing. Jesus is the Prince of Peace, and he offers us peace, not just in the future, but now, in the midst of our grief, in the midst of our homesickness, and in the midst of whatever wilderness we're walking through. I want to take a look at John 14. Jesus says, "Let not your hearts be troubled. Believe in God. Believe also in me. In my Father's house are many rooms. If it were not so, would I have told you that I go to prepare a place for you? And when I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and will take you to myself, that where I am, you may also be." This passage fills me with so much hope. It's one I have reflected on a lot. Jesus has prepared a place for you, a home, a place where you are completely known, loved, and at peace. An example of this in my day-to-day life, I stay at my sister's house pretty often. It started when she had a baby because I wanted to help her out. Now she has a toddler, so I stay there. My sister, she's so kind. She leaves me a little note saying, "Oh, we've missed you. Thank you for staying with us. The bed is clean and made, and the sheets are freshly washed, and she has a Scentsy pot going." There's something about having a place prepared for you. It is a beautiful way to intentionally love people, and my sister does that very well. As much as I appreciate and love my sister, she's human, and if she can love me that well, imagine the care he's taken in preparing a place for you here, right now, in your heart. A place where you are known, loved, and at peace. I want to share some action steps we can take for this Christmas season. I want to start by saying this very loud and very clear. Seeking counseling or help from a priest does not mean you have weak faith. I think there is this stigma or idea that if you really trust God, you shouldn't need support. But that is just simply not true. Just like doctors, God has given us the gift of people, therapists, counselors, and priests who are equipped to help us navigate our grief. Even Jesus, in his humanity, knew what it was like to feel abandoned and lonely. He didn't ask us to carry our pain alone. Reaching out for help shows humility and trust in God's plan for healing. Thinking of Christmas Day, you may be dreading it. I encourage you to begin the day with God. It doesn't need to be anything big or elaborate. Find a quiet moment in the morning before the day gets too busy. Tell God exactly how you're feeling. You don't need to sugarcoat or pretend everything is fine. God, this is hard. I miss my dad, and I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to get through it. Then ask him to help you feel his love in a new way, even in your grief, your struggle. This doesn't fix everything, but it's a reminder that you are not alone. God is with you, even in the hardest moments. Lastly, find a way to honor your loved one this Christmas. For my family this year, we're making my dad's favorite German chocolate cake. It's a simple thing, but it helps us feel connected to him. Mass is also being offered for him Christmas Eve. And I was reading, and maybe I'm totally wrong, but I've read on several websites that souls in purgatory are able to go to Mass, especially when the Mass is being said for them. Not that that's what should fully motivate me to go to Mass. Jesus is in the Eucharist, and that is the main, central, beautiful point of Mass, and it will forever be. But the Lord knows that I miss my dad, and He knows that we miss our loved ones, and I think it's a beautiful way that the Lord continues to reach our hearts and allows us to feel loved. Being able to offer Mass for our loved ones. So, yeah, having Mass offered for your loved ones. You can also pray a rosary in their memory, asking Mary to intercede for them. These small acts can bring us comfort and allow us to carry our loved ones' memory to Jesus. Even in our grief, we can still celebrate their lives and bring them before God. As we wrap up, remember that God became man to enter into our humanity. Jesus knows exactly what you're feeling this Christmas. He understands the hurt, the longing, and the grief. His strength becomes perfect in our weakness. So humbly present your heart to Him, however it may look. Allow baby Jesus to heal you and be present with you in your pain. God doesn't overlook the struggle of your heartache. He desperately wants to care for you. Ask Him for His peace and comfort this Christmas season. May the blessings of the Holy Family be with you, and may you feel His love surrounding you always. Hey friends, I hope you enjoyed today's episode of Inspired by Grace. If it resonated with you, could you take a quick 30 seconds to share it with a friend who might also want to deepen their faith? It would mean so much to me. And if you have a moment, leaving a review really helps us reach more hearts. Also, don't forget to follow us on social media for daily inspirations and updates. Knowing this podcast is making a difference in your life truly warms my heart. Faith is a journey, we're all in this together, so let's keep supporting one another along the way. I'll be back next week with another episode, and I can't wait to continue this journey with you. Until then, stay blessed, stay inspired, and I'll see you in the Eucharist.